Hello everyone and welcome to ipshuttle.com. My name is Vikas and I will be your instructor for 3xCCIE course. Today we will be covering overview of VTP, which is called VLAN trunking protocol. Okay. We will be looking into what are the different modes of that VTP and how to configure it. Let's get started. Let's assume an environment where you have two switches. You can configure the same VLANs on one and you manually go to the other switch and configure those one by one, same names, everything which we have did earlier. But the second option is you can actually dynamically transfer whatever you have configured on that switch to the other side. This is what is done by VLAN trunking protocol, which is also named as VTP. The VTP automatically transfer whatever the VLANs you have configured on that switch, the names of that VLAN, the numbers of that VLAN to the other switches. One more concept to be noted here is in the VTP, the switches which will be receiving this new update, they need to be part of same domain name. We also call it VTP domains, not the DNS domains, the VTP domain. Usually this topic is missed in the CCNA, even NP as well, but I believe it's important to understand this protocol as well because by default it is disabled on few switches, but you should understand how this works. It will ease up your life. There are three different modes. We have server mode. In server mode, what happens? We are basically configuring all the VLANs on this mode only. There is no other modes which supports the VLAN configuration. We will be configuring VLANs, names and everything. And VTP will take that whole database for the VLANs and send it as an advertisement on all the trunk interfaces. The second switch will receive that information and matches the domain name. If it is in client mode, it will save it in its database, configure the new VLANs, names and everything, but it will also forward it to the other interfaces as well. Okay. The last mode we have is the transparent mode. In transparent mode, it receives the advertisements coming from either server or client. It will receive that information, but it will not save it to the database. It will only forward it to the other trunk interfaces. You can also configure the VLANs on this switch. It will not impact other switches. So think it as completely isolated switch. It will be just, you will be configuring the VLANs only particular to that switch. I hope that clarifies the doubt. There is a difference between VTP off and VTP transparent mode. A VTP off mode means you are not participating in VTP at all and you will not even transfer the packets of VTP. Alright. The next one, if it is in VTP transparent, it will receive the information coming from the VTP domain and it will forward it, but it will not save it. The difference is important. When you are working in the live environment, please don't change VTP domains or their modes, because let's assume that you have configured a mode from client to server. You change the mode and you have configured new VLANs, or you might have deleted it. You accidentally might have deleted all of the database for the other switches as well. Okay, let's say transparent to you made it a server and it was not having any VLANs. It will just replicate. Be careful, don't do this kind of things. The last part we have is the labs. Let's go back to the lab and see how this thing works. All right, let's get back to the lab. I have configured switch 1, switch 2 and switch 3. We will be configuring one in server mode, one in transparent and one in client. And if you remember, the server mode can configure the VLANs and it can broadcast the updates. It can even receive the update from other servers as well. In transparent mode, it can forward the VLANs updates which is received from the server, but it will not save it. If let's say we will be configuring VLAN 10, 20 and 30 on here, you will not see them here. The last one is client mode. In this one, it will be receiving the VTP updates. It will be able to save that update, and even if it has any trunk interface on the other side, it can also forward it. So we will see in this transparent mode, you will not have any VLAN. So we can manually configure VLAN maybe 100 and 200. We will notice that these two VLANs are not on this server or client. You will be able to understand the concept of transparent, server and client mode. Let's head back to the lab. The first thing you will be doing is you can check which mode it's running in. So you will issue the command show VTP status. The important information to be noted here is one is version, which it can support. It can support version 1 and 2. We already discussed the difference between them. You can read it in the description as well. So it's capable of version 2 and it is running version 2. It does not support the version 3. That means we will not be able to send the extended VLANs, which is starting from 1005 and above. We will not be able to send it to other switches, and that is why you can see maximum VLAN supported is 1005. This is the standard range, and you don't see a domain name. By default, there is no domain name configured for the VTP. You need to mention. It's good practice to configure the domain names and limit the update where you want it tomorrow. Maybe you have different networks where you want to have different VTP domains. It will be good to configure it. You can switch it off as well by simply putting the command VTP off, but I will not be able to demonstrate that because this is a packet tracer and it does not support this command, but you can switch it off. Then when you will run the show VTP status, it will not show anything. Okay. The next thing to be understanding here, this one, the operation mode, it says it's in server mode. By default, all of the switches are in server mode. We can configure it and it will replicate to the other one. Let's make a design. Okay, let's configure it VLAN 10 and VLAN 20 here. And currently this one is in server mode by default. Okay, so let's remove this one. Let's configure VLAN 30 here. You will notice that this VLAN 30 is available finally coming from here all the way to the switch. So this will prove that server to server you can also replicate, and transparent will not be saving this information, but it will be forwarding to all the interface, since this one is a trunk and this one is a trunk. I have already configured the trunk, so don't worry on that. Let's go back. This one, let's configure it. And we will mention VTP domain, let's say ipshuttle.com. So it has changed it from null to ipshuttle.com. We can go to the other switches. We will not change the mode for now. We can quickly change it for all of them. And we can, let's go to configure terminal, VTP domain name ipshuttle.com. That's great. It already got replicated because it was null. And we should go to the other switch and we will try to see if the VTP domain got replicated. Okay, let's say show VTP status. By default, it have it now as VTP ipshuttle.com. Whatever the VLANs, we will configure it on the server. Now this one will be also able to receive it because currently it is in server mode. We will be changing it to transparent. We don't want it to save it. How to change a mode? It's very simple. You just have to issue a command on it to change the mode. You will be just going to configure terminal, VTP mode, and we want to make it transparent. If you do the show VTP status now, you will notice that you have a transparent mode. Now we will go to the client side, the next switch 3. Currently it is in server mode. We will try to configure it with a few VLANs. For example, we can do one thing is let's configure VLAN 10 on here and VLAN 20 on here, and then we will configure VLAN 30 on this one. Okay, you will see this information is moving to the other side. We can just quickly configure this one. Let's configure on switch 3. Let's go to the switch 3, and if we notice show VTP status, currently it is in server mode, but it did not receive this domain name. Let's configure it. Configure terminal, VTP domain ipshuttle.com. Show VTP status, and we have our domain configured. All right, so we should be able to expect some VLANs coming from server, which is switch 1, and we will be trying to configure some here, and we'll see if it gets replicated back. All right, let's go back to switch 1. And we will be configuring VLAN 10, name it data 10, and maybe VLAN 20 and name it data 20. Okay, now we can go to switch 3, which is currently in server mode. We can see show VLAN, and you will notice we have two VLANs configured already. Okay, now if we configure the VLAN 30 on this one, we should be able to send it to switch 1. Let's try that, and let's go to configure terminal, VLAN 30, name it data 30 maybe. Okay, let's go to switch 1 and see if it has received the update. All right, go to this one, let's do up arrow. You will be able to see that command for show VLAN. Let's configure it. Show VLAN. You have data 3. Okay, so you have the third VLAN as well, which is coming from switch 3. Now let's look into the switch 2 as well, that if there is any VLANs got configured on it or no. The last one, we will be configuring this third switch as well into client mode. Let's quickly look into the switch 2. Let's look into the switch 2. We will say show VLAN, and if you notice, there is none of the VLANs are running now, and it is currently in transparent mode. So that's why it is sending the updates to the other interface, but it's not saving it. Let's go to switch 3 and change it to client mode. Okay, VTP mode client, show VLAN. It is having 3 VLANs, and show VTP status. It is in client mode. If you now try to configure the VLAN, it will be rejecting it. Let's try it and say configure terminal, VLAN maybe 50, and you will get a notification saying it is in client mode, so you are not allowed to configure this one. Now we are not able to send this update. We will go back to server and we will configure VLAN 50, and we should have it here. Let's go to switch 1, which is in server mode. All right, configure terminal. Let's name it VLAN 50, name it data 50. We should be able to see on switch 3 that it got replicated. Let's see if we have it, and show VLAN, and yes, we have it. The last part we will be looking into is if we configure any VLAN on the transparent, does it replicates or no. All right, let's go back to that transparent mode. Change the host name of this one, actually it's bothering me. This is switch 2, or let's make it a little bit more clear. It is in transparent mode. So this is in transparent mode, shows VLAN, we don't have any VLAN, and show VTP status, we have it in the transparent mode, and domain name is configured. So let's try to configure VLAN 100, name it switch 2 VLAN 100, and let's name it VLAN 200, switch to VLAN 200, show VLAN, and we have 2 VLANs on this one, but you will not have these VLANs on switch 1 or switch 3. Go back and verify. We are going to switch 1. Let's change the hostname for this guy as well. Hostname switch 1. Let's make it server. Show VTP status, it is in server mode, and show VLAN, It has only the VLANs which we have configured earlier, but not the 100 and 200. Okay, so let's verify on the client mode as well. Let's change the hostname for this guy as well. Hostname switch3 client, and show VTP status. You have it client mode. Show VLAN. You have only the VLANs which we have configured, but not 100 and 200. 100 and 200, why it's not there? Because of the transparent mode. This is where we conclude our lab. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment section below. If I have increased your knowledge in any ways, please hit like and subscribe. I will be covering CCNA, NP and IE. I want you to be expert of networking. I will see you in the next lecture. Take care.